Welcome back to the ATV channel, guys, and we are back on the E23. Now, in the last episode, we did a few bits to get the engine bay prepared, like clean it up, degrease it, get it up to scratch, and do some welding. We had the engine rebuilt, the top end mainly, had a head gasket put on, and a new timing chain and guides, and all the other associated parts. And then Chris sent the engine back to us, and we offloaded that engine, and the first thing we did was painted the engine block to make it look fresh. Now, in this episode, we are getting on to fitting some of those parts to the car, things like the exhaust manifold, intake manifold, and things like that. So we are also going to be fitting the gearbox and the associated parts, so the flywheel and torque converter. I'll talk you through it. Let's get right into it and hope you enjoy this video. So just want to show you guys the bunch of parts that we've got. So new gaskets, new exhaust and intake gaskets, water pump, thermostat, air filter, oil filter, all the good stuff, rocker cover gasket. Yeah, so slowly I'm just going to piece this together. We have hit a bit of a speed bump along the way. I need to put a washer on one of the timing bolts, so that means the whole case has to come off. Now I can't get it today, it's Saturday today, but I will order it from BMW and it will come on Monday and I'll get it fitted. Even if the engine goes in the car and I do it afterwards, it's totally fine. So yeah, that's the next step. Let's get it. Let's start building this engine up. I've got to put the manifold on. I've got to put the alternator on. I've got to put lots of little pieces on, the engine mounts and all that kind of stuff. And obviously the rocker cover. So that's the next step. Let's get it. So the first part that I'm fitting is the intake manifold, and before we get it fitted we are putting brand new gaskets. So these are intake manifold gaskets that we're putting on. Before we get them on, I have to take the old gaskets off and they are really jammed to the actual manifold. So all I'm doing is getting them off as safely as possible without damaging the surface, and also putting tissue so that none of the debris goes inside the intake, because that's the last thing that we want. Once I'd taken all of the old gaskets off, I used a bit of sandpaper and a wood block just to sand down the surface to make sure that it's a nice and flat and clean surface before putting the new intake manifold gaskets on. Once both mating surfaces were nice and clean, I started placing the new intake manifold gaskets onto the engine block side, and then that way I could put the intake manifold on top and start bolting everything down. Once the intake manifold was positioned, I put brand new bolts in on every single stud on here. If I needed to, I also replaced the studs as well, but the ones that were jammed in, I just reused the ones that were there. There was no point trying to faff around with them and take them out with the risk of them snapping inside the head. So that's the last thing that I wanted happening. Once the top side of the bolts were done, I got Ricky to do the bottom side while I got on with doing the rear main seal of this block. Now, this plate at the back was pretty seized on, so I just slowly chipped away at it without damaging anything. And also it's a good opportunity to get this done while the engine is out and also the gearbox is away from the main block. So we thought we might as well just do it and then it's done and we don't need to worry about it in the future, especially in the near future. All I'm doing here is putting a new seal onto the housing and then a new gasket around that plate that holds it and bolting it all back up to the engine. Now the next thing that I got onto was fitting the flywheel, and when fitting the flywheel it's important to put thread lock on all your bolts, because the last thing that you want is this to become undone. So on each bolt I put a bit of thread lock, tightened it all up, and then I got the torque wrench out and torqued these all up to spec. Unfortunately the camera stopped after we torqued up these bolts, so the next thing that we got onto was fitting the gearbox to the actual engine. But before we did that, we fitted the torque converter into the gearbox by pushing it right in to make sure that the pump was connected correctly, and then we mounted the gearbox to the engine. The next job that we had to do was fit the torque converter bolts and get them through the flywheel, and the way that we did that was just doing it through this part of the engine so that we can get access to the bolts. Got them in with bit thread lock and torqued them up. Getting on to the next part of this rebuild, we put new studs into the exhaust side. More than likely you would have to change these because either they just snap or they just come out with the bolt anyway. And also they get really rusty on the exhaust side, I think just because of the extreme heat and cold. Once we put new studs in, we put new exhaust manifold gaskets in, and this is just again putting brand new seals in. While we're here, we might as well get it done, and that way it seals up those exhaust fumes correctly. And once that was done, we could finally marry up the exhaust manifold to the head, and again brand new bolts for this too. So as you can see, we're slowly adding more and more parts to the engine, and before we put the rocker cover on, we decided to give it a good clean down just to smarten it up. So Ricky was getting on with this while I was getting on with mounting up the engine mounts to the block. Now bearing in mind we are changing this engine from an M30B32 to an M30B34. Because of this, we had to mount the engine mounts to different locations on the block. Now because these weren't used before, they were heavily corroded, so I had to use a bolt and drill it in and out a few times just to clean them up, just so that the bolts go in nicely. And as you can see, Ricky is making more and more progress on this rocker cover, and then just chipping away at it just to make it look good. Once he was done cleaning it, he then degreased the whole area and then got the polishing machine on it just to give it that little bit of shine to make it pop. In all honesty, small efforts like this make a big impact, and honestly the rocker cover looks amazing now, so we're going to stick that on once we're done. There we have it, we can finally put the rocker cover onto the block. The rocker cover looks amazing, the head looks amazing, and the block looks amazing too. And slowly this engine is coming together bit by bit. It's things like this which take a little bit of patience and a little bit of time and a little bit of effort as well, just to get it looking good. But in the end, it's all worth it. We did find that because we're using the M30B32 rocker cover on the M30B34 head, the studs were incorrect, so we had to go around and pull all the studs out one by one using a mole grip and a bit of cloth just to make sure that we don't damage the threads. So the old way that the rocker cover was mounted to the head was using studs and bolts. The new way that we're going to mount it is by using hex bolts, so all we got to do is put them from the top and feed them into the head. And just to mention, we put the rocker cover gasket in as well. Unfortunately, that's all we can cover in this video. However, we will be fitting the engine to the car in the next video, so be sure that you subscribe, hit that bell notification so you are made aware when that video drops. I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and we hope to see you on the next one.